Welcome everyone to the Eye for an Eye channel. For those of you not keeping an eye on what's going on in Maui, there's so many things going on. We all know about the low reported number of people dead. Of course, all of the missing children, not only unaccounted for, never mentioned by the mainstream media. These are all things done by design, right? A lot of people go, well, why wouldn't they just mention the kids and say that the kids perished in the fire? Well, there's no evidence, right? And of course, if people say, well, if the kids perished in the fire, then where are their dental records, etc.? They don't want people to know how hot that fire was, because then people would realize that it wasn't a wildfire, that it was a direct energy weapon, which could literally melt you to ashes. Thus, there would be no dental record. Thus, people would say, well, wait a minute, how does a wildfire cause, somebody's teeth? Everyone's seen stories of people burning in fires. They find their dental records to identify the bodies. So thousands of people, all of them just unaccounted for. Then, of course, the number of deaths versus what they're reporting. So there's a lot of reasons why they wouldn't just admit to that and say, oh, they all perished, and et cetera, to bring sympathy and then push the climate agenda. They don't want anyone suspicious of it. And they don't want anyone suspicious, not just of the smart cities that are going up, because that seems to be the narrative that's a lot of, I don't know what you want to call them, right-wing people are running with, which is truth, which I said before. The day that this happened, I talked about the smart city as the top agenda, because that's what a lot of these natural disasters, which are not natural, which of course are caused by them, are going to lead to. But the other thing is, of course, is FEMA. And people don't realize that the FEMA camps, this isn't something that they've dropped because we haven't heard about it. We haven't seen pictures go viral of all the FEMA coffins, etc. The FEMA camp, people don't get. It's the same type of mind control that they've used over the years, where they put a nice little track behind it. Like I always make reference to the commercials for medications, right? They're like, hey, are you suffering from ED? And then they have a couple walking on the beach. They have beautiful music playing. And then they read like 9,000 side effects. Like, hey, you might explode in the night. Your head might catch fire. You might get terminal cancer from this. But don't worry about it, because you'll be able to get stiff again, or whatever the medicine is, right? And they make it sound all wonderful. They do the same stuff with FEMA, because they act as if they're coming in and they're going to give you housing when they're the ones responsible for the destruction. So people go, well, what is the point? They're going to burn people out of their homes so they can have they're going to bring in little homes for them. Why would they even do that? Because they want control. Because once you go into these FEMA camps, FEMA then becomes your landlord. And when FEMA's your landlord, you have to do as FEMA says, or you're going to be homeless, right? If you're homeless, then you're not going to have food or water. And of course, they've contaminated the water supply all around these areas, and there's no food left. Everything's scarce. So you end up getting forced in via starvation. And then, of course, what's the thing that they want more than anything? I've said it for years now. If you're new to this, all those videos are available on the website, Uprising Revival. And that topic, which can't be discussed here, they're hell-bent on getting something inside of you. And again, those things are going to coincide with each other. As more of these natural disasters happen, the rules and regulations inside these camps will make it mandatory for you to have water, for you to have food, and for you to have a roof over your head. So FEMA, of course, now is being rolled in. And they're talking about, I'm going to play the governor of Hawaii. This guy, just the sight of him makes me violently ill. But just bear with his face and listen to some of the things that he says here, because he's talking about housing until 2025 for a lot of these people. He's talking about not touching Lahaina and building these little cities, communities outside of Lahaina, where there could, and eventually he goes on to say, it's temporary, but he says it could lead to long-term housing, because they want you to live in these homes. And these homes, of course, are owned by the government. They're given to you. You live rent-free. But people are like, that's great. I don't have to pay rent and all that stuff. Well, technically, all of our tax money is going to pay for all these people's housing. We're all going to pay for our own enslavement. That's how this is going to work. But the whole point is that the landlord, just like in any home, right? You live in a home, you are under the landlord's rules. If you rent a house, I should say. When you rent, X amount of things happen, right? If you rent a home and then you're throwing parties and people are complaining, the landlord could ban you, throw you out, evict you. The same thing will be in these, but just think about the difference. If you're in a home that you're renting and you don't like, and the landlord doesn't like how you're living and you don't like the landlord, you could leave and go somewhere else. Here you have no money, you have no food, you have no resources, you have nowhere to go, and you're stuck on an island, which is why they chose Maui, in my opinion, because people are stranded there. They can't just drive over and go into Idaho or some other state and find somewhere to live and start over. They're stuck here. They're isolated. They're away from the states. That's why they strategically are doing it there. One of the reasons, not to mention all the underground places, but they have those in a lot of other states as well. So here he is. Listen to all the stuff about, of course, how they're playing into how they're really helping people, but they're really getting people trapped inside of the government-owned housing.
The long-term debris removal is going to take a great deal of time. This is going to take the better part of a year to remove all of this debris and over $1 billion to complete. I'm speaking with the folks at FEMA on Saturday to review the first options. There are pieces of land not in Lahaina, because we're not going to rebuild anything in Lahaina, obviously, for a significant amount of time, not only because it's impossible, because the people of Lahaina have not yet told us what to build, but in and around Lahaina, there may be some need for temporary housing. Since August 16th, the American Red Cross, the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency, and FEMA have relocated over 7,500 displaced survivors from shelters to a total of 29 hotels and hundreds of Airbnbs. 15,931 individuals have filed for FEMA relief. The accommodations I have described will continue to provide meals, casework services, financial recovery resources, and other disaster relief assistance until we're able to move to the next phase of our recovery. However, hotels can't be our long-term solution to housing in West Maui. We've entered into an agreement with the Red Cross to house our people for a minimum of 36 weeks. We're also pursuing relationships with large numbers of homeowners who have historically used their properties for short-term rentals to convert them into longer-term rentals to accommodate displaced residents. Residents can actually enter into much longer agreements to receive housing through FEMA. FEMA will continue to assist us with direct leases and rental assistance grants to ensure that people can stay housed for 18 months well into 2025. Finally, a smaller number of transitional temporary housing units in the form of kauhale communities will be built on Maui to aid those not housed in long-term rentals or hotels. Now, there's another amount of housing that we have to begin to prepare for, and that's temporary housing that's much more substantial, that people may want to live in very long-term. I'm speaking with the folks at FEMA on Saturday to review the first options. There are pieces of land not in Lahaina, because we're not going to rebuild anything in Lahaina, obviously, for a significant amount of time, not only because it's impossible, because the people of Lahaina have not yet told us what to build, but in and around Lahaina, there may be some need for temporary housing. We can do that. The way it works with FEMA is for those who don't have any insurance, for those who have costs that are unmet, they will provide a huge grant. Usually it's after a year. We've gone through 4 months of meetings, and that will determine how much money we get and how much we can build. And I'm expecting that to be well over $1 billion of housing monies, but time will have to tell. So that's where we'll find certain parcels of land, and I would like to build those sooner rather than later, because after 18 months, it's not totally clear that we'll have ongoing resources for people. So as soon as I get the green light from FEMA, I'm going to start those conversations, and I would like to see us build 500, 1,000, 1,500 units of some sort if the community will have them. This has nothing to do with the Emergency Housing Proclamation or the Homeless Proclamation. It simply has to do with disaster recovery and what FEMA can offer. So there's just so we don't, I don't want to confuse two things. There's two forms of housing that we're going to be pursuing, okay? Really even three. There's going to be the hotels and Airbnbs, right? For anybody that we can get into them, and that will be most of the population. The kauhale we build, right now there were 165 individuals that were homeless in the region before the fire, and we've been taking care of everybody. Those individuals qualify for almost no programs, unfortunately. They didn't have housing, they didn't have a rental. So for them, we're going to stand up some kauhale, okay? That's a universe of up to 165 people. Now we turn to Lahaina Town and our road to recovery and healing. Many displaced survivors have asked when they can return to their homes and properties and businesses to survey the damage. In the coming weeks, we'll begin to schedule supervised visits for displaced people to return and view their property under safe conditions. I need to share this with you. The ash, we are told, is quite toxic, so we need to be careful. Once the EPA has completed its removal of hazardous materials from the affected areas, which is ongoing, this process will take 3 to 4 months, we can begin the removal of other debris. To be clear, people will get in soon, but the long-term debris removal is going to take a great deal of time. We're in a partnership right now with FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers in this effort. This is going to take the better part of a year to remove all of this debris and over $1 billion to complete. This will be supported by the federal government. The people of Maui must have as much time as they need to heal and recover, and will begin to rebuild only when they are ready, according to the timeline they choose.
So now once they get you inside of these homes, of course, they pretend like they're the hero. They're the one doing the wonderful thing. This is how this deception works, of course. And this is the problem that people have, is that when they think of concentration camps, think of all the pictures that they've seen, all the prop that they've heard over the years, and they're fenced in and all these types of things, and they're not free. This is really a war on your mind. So they're imprisoning you in your mind here. And they're imprisoning you in these camps, but they don't need to put up a fence, right? This will look different than what we saw during WW2, or the pictures at least of what we saw. Not really what happened, but what we saw, right? This mindset that they've created over the years and beaten into our heads. So they're going to use this and say, these people are crazy, or comparing the two, et cetera, et cetera. And all we're doing is saying, hey, you need to get a certain something if you want to stay here. Because, of course, if you don't have a certain something, you're a threat to everybody else in the community, so everybody thus is going to have to have it. And everybody has to have it for a reason. It's not to depop, it's deeper than that, because this upticks into people's bodies, and people they connect, and then we have an internet of bodies, which I can't get into here on YouTube. But here's some clips of FEMA, right? You can see how they try to, puff this up as a community, and they come in for housing. Notice some of the stuff in these videos, of course, like the utopian street names, which I've shown in the past, where you have Wonderful Lane and Be Happy Forever Boulevard, and it's all like it's Stepford Wives stuff. It's like Pleasantville. You know what I mean? It's all this. It's an illusion. It's delusion, really, of these people thinking they're in a safe haven and a utopia because all the wonderful names, and then everybody's just probably walking around giving pumpkin pie to each other like Pleasantville, and they don't realize that they're trapped. Right? So there's a delusion there. But also notice, it's really hilarious, that there's a FEMA emergency button on the homes, right? So immediately they'll contact FEMA. I'm sure all the lights will go on in the community, hit the button. Everyone will be like, that's great. That way we can all stay safe in case Ted Bundy comes to my front door inside of the camp, even though there's military walking around the streets. Of course, these buttons will be if anyone tries to escape, but they'll tell you it's to protect you. But take a look at the insanity. These are videos that FEMA has posted themselves showing you this dystopian reality.
I'm Giacomo Luca in Gridley. It's a project 2.5 months in the making, but now FEMA is putting the finishing touches on a community for 400 families that will house campfire survivors. FEMA crews have cleared the 72-acre site, running underground electric, sewer, water, and paved roads in a project costing in the tens of millions, building essentially an entire neighborhood in just 2.5 months. Survivors will live in these 1 to 4 bedroom housing units that look like this. 300 have already been placed. They'll come fully furnished and will look similar to this inside. FEMA's project manager says crews have exceeded expectations because they know just how important it is.
They're not walking between trailers. They're running from trailer to trailer to jump on the next project. And that to me is pretty amazing to watch that kind of enthusiasm to help get the project finished on that pace.
For the past 8 months, we've told you stories of those who have lost their homes in the wildfire and have since been living in hotels, shelters, or with family and friends. The first family will move in this afternoon and a majority over the rest of this weekend. Meanwhile, crews are ready to bring in the final 100 units to complete this project.
Well, Hurricane Laura is what happened to my house. It tore my whole roof off, or it looks like it did, and windows busted out, and water standing in my house got all wet. It's just horrible. For all my appliances, furniture, everything was soaked, so it was no good. So I called FEMA to see if they could help me. And they did. They brought me a trailer. I was living from house to house, kinfolk to kinfolk to kinfolk, or friend to friend to friend, jumping from house to house, and I was so glad to get in there. And once I got FEMA on the phone, I asked them, could I put the trailer on my property? Because I wanted to be home. There's no place like home. So they did. They agreed to that, and they put the FEMA trailer right here on my property. I'm home. All my family lives around here. My friends live here. It's very convenient. And I'm just thankful to FEMA for allowing me to put it on my property. people, FEMA, they are a blessing. They're giving me a home right now to live in, and it is such a blessing to me. I'm glad to be home, and FEMA made that possible. They really did.
I'm here to license in a couple who, by their not to their own fault, have been received damage. FEMA has partnered up with Mosswood Estates. Mosswood Estates have, I want to say, about 300 units.
We was hit with the first storm and my trailer was very damaged. We'd lived there for a long time and we evacuated to Mississippi.
Me, my 2 boys, and my grandson lived in a 4-bedroom trailer. And Hurricane Laura happened and we left town.
Other than that, we've been pretty much homeless, sleeping place to place. I slept in my car for about a month.
People checked out my trailer and said it had a big hole. And they said that you couldn't even walk in it, it was too dangerous, you'd fall through the floor. Just while we were in Dallas, we had to switch motels like 3 times. Then turned around and they finally come to us and told us we were going back to Louisiana. It's okay. And they put us in New Orleans.
We had no idea what we was gonna do. We had no other choices. We had nowhere to turn.
And then yesterday, I called and said they had a home for me.
I am beyond thankful. This is really helping a lot. We didn't know what we was gonna do.
I thank FEMA. I really do, because I just want to come home. I really do.
We had no other choices. We had nowhere to turn.
So again, we have Governor Green talking about how they want, so a lot of these people are going to want long-term living and how we're going to be able to fund this up until 2025 and then hopefully longer. Of course, because if they tell you that they're going to fund this forever and now you can live in a community, you don't have to pay rent, everyone's just going to be suspicious of what's going on. So they're like, oh, is this just temporary housing? And we're going to rebuild. And then eventually in 2 years, no one's even going to remember what happened in Maui. And they're going to go, why aren't they rebuilding there? Oh, no one's going to go, why aren't they rebuilding there? What's going on there? Oh, they're building a city. And then they're going to roll you out of your temporary FEMA housing into new FEMA housing inside of the cities, which will be even more control because of the technology around them. And everyone will be thrilled because they're like, I'm back in Lahaina. I don't care that I'm inside of this because I've been desensitized for 2 years. I'm just glad that I'm back. And they'll be even more thrilled that they don't have to pay rent, right? Even though none of us should have to pay any of this stuff. The government has scooped up all the land, forcing us. People should be able to go places and just live. But, this is all stuff, the way that we've empowered our government, and they've done it to us through psychological operations. So people need to be aware of what's going on with FEMA. And they're not aware. People just think of FEMA and they just think, oh, well, FEMA, you have two sides of the coin, right? The people who are somewhat awake, they think, oh, okay, FEMA, they're going to go get them. They're going to trap them in there. Yeah, they are. But remember, it's going to be the illusion of being, the illusion of freedom inside of it. They're not going to put fences up because they know people will feel like they're trapped. But they're going to trap you psychologically so that you stay, right? All these things they tell you are going to be there to protect you, are going to be there to enslave you, like buttons on your home that you could sound in case anybody, you hear your neighbor talking against FEMA, you hear your neighbor is trying to get out of there, press the FEMA button. They'll have all rules and restrictions, but the most important being that everybody will have to have certain things inside of them over and over and over again, or you will not get food, water, or housing. That's how they're going to force this on people. Through the climate agenda. They're going to work both at the same time. And you'll find that a lot of the people who are running their mouths saying that they would never do this or take this or comply, when push comes to shove, when they don't have food or water, when they're dying of starvation, they will cave into this. And they know this. This is part of their plan. This has been part of their plan from the get-go, that people will have to make decisions, very hard decisions. And it will be very hard for a lot of people who don't know how to fend for themselves. And they're making sure on the other side of that people who try to stay free of these things cannot fend for themselves by killing resources off, by killing the water supply, right? People haven't noticed what has happened to a lot of the wildlife out there. Stuff I'll cover over on the website, Uprising Revival. Again, more stuff I've covered over the last couple of years with the deer population, animals and things that you would think you could go and hunt so that you could eat, what they've done to them, what they're putting in them. And of course, there's also an outbreak occurring amongst those animals, right? This is a full-on attack, and they know how we're all thinking. They know that people are thinking, well, I don't have to go into a FEMA. I don't have to do this because I'll live on my own. They get that. They know. They read the data. They listen. It's their game, so they're always going to be a step ahead because they're listening and spying on all of us. So then they go, okay, well, we're going to make sure that they don't have any resources. We're going to take them all away. And that, again, that's why you see a lot of the stuff going on in certain places like Morocco, right? It's one of the leading places for phosphates. And again, for fertilizer, right? Because they want to make sure people don't have any of these things so that they can do any stuff on their own. So if you have all these seeds stored up and you're like, well, I'm going to start farming, or I am farming, they're going to kill those off. One, they're going to kill off the fertilizer supply. And then two, they're going to kill off the fertilizer supplies from the sky by poisoning the crops and doing all the stuff they're doing. So it's a full-on assault to get you into these camps. And people are like, well, what is the camp is owned by the government. So you will oblige by their rules, and there will be, hate speech, all these things inside of here. Will take away free speech. You will not be able to bear inside of these camps. Of course, there'll be military police inside of these camps. The military will be in there. So you will be entrapped, but they're going to not have a fence up because they're going to pretend like you could run free because they know that, well, the technology they have in place there, you're not going to be able to go anywhere because it's going to be more state-of-the-art than any prison that exists, right? Infrared will be everywhere. They'll be able to track everything you do. People will be chipped, of course, inside of here, so they don't have to worry about it. So they'll say, hey, yeah, you could run free, and they'll get you in about 5 seconds after you leave with a drone or whatever else. And on top of that, if you say something somehow and you're able to get away or speak code or whatever, right? If you try to change the language up and speak code to other people and someone else finds out, oh, they're speaking something different. Well, there'll be a notification book on how you're supposed to speak, what you're supposed to report to FEMA, and you'll be rewarded by FEMA by pressing that button and tattling on each other. If you didn't see 1984 or read 1984, it's exactly what it's going to look like. Exactly the way it's going to go. And those people who tattle will be rewarded. They'll either get more food or they get more exercise time or free time or whatever else. This is the insanity we're heading towards. But of course, they're not going to admit to this stuff. They're going to come out like a white knight and they're going to say, hey, look, these people are conspiracy nuts. We're providing for them, even though they're paying for it with their tax money. Right? We're giving them housing, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, you'll have to live under our rules, but that's for the benefit of everybody. That's for the health and safety of everybody. And that's where this is all headed. So the people in Maui are obviously going to get herded into this stuff. And of course, they're talking about the certain parcels of land that they have and how long they're going to be there for. And they want to build 500, as you saw, 1,000, 1,500 units of some sort if the community will have them. So they're going to build new communities. They're pretending like, well, if the community will have them, the community's going to have no choice, as we've seen. They're like, oh, the community will have. No, they won't. They're just telling you that so it seems like they're wonderful people. If they came out and they said, hey, we're throwing you in here, this is where you're going to live and you're going to like it, then people will band together to not thinking about what politics sides they play. And they'll band together and say, wait a minute, you don't have the right to do that to other people. But instead they pretend, oh, yeah, we're going to, we'll bring in the homeless too, and you won't have to pay rent. Don't worry about it. It's all great. Well, why should you have to pay rent? Do prisoners pay rent in jail? Of course not. Of course they don't. That's exactly what this is. So that's what's going on in Maui, and that's what's going to continue to go on around the earth as far as more and more of these natural disasters, which are not natural. It is not climate change. It is the government doing this with weaponized weather all around the earth. They have all been working together, plotting together, and they have the boogeyman that they need to make the masses believe that this is some natural event going on where they're enslaving all of us. It's very frightening to see how many people are falling for it. I thank everyone for being here. Hope to see you on the website, uprisingrevival.com. Hope you're all doing well. God bless all of you as always and your families.